everybody, this is T. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today we're going to begin a new discussion, and that is elections on the change grid. So we're going to be talking about how the flow of productive tension, how the management or manipulation of productive tension occurs prior to, during, and after any kind of an election. So what we want to be talking about really just what's going on from a practical academic sort of a perspective. I don't want this to in any way become a discussion about anyone's individual political views or those kinds of issues. I just want to talk about the mechanics, what's going on, what needs to go on in a good election. So that's we're going to kind of be looking at it. I'm going to ask you guys some questions, and these questions hopefully will end up building all by themselves this kind of understanding of how the whole election process operates from a totally dissociated position. So we're going to do our very best to dissociate so we can kind of see what's really going on, what are the mechanics and what's happening. So with that, let me go right ahead and slide in a little bit of a PowerPoint. So elections on the change grid. Here's question number one. Who votes? Where on the change grid do people vote?
Out and upgrid.
So out and upgrid. Tell us why you think that upgrid and outgrid locations are where the voters actually are.
Well,
by the way, by voters, I mean people who vote, not anyone who's eligible to vote, but the people who actually participate and vote. And so where do voters tend to be on the change grid? So David, upgrade and outgrid, what's your...
productive tension.
Yeah, upgrade because they've got plenty of tension to do it. And so you can talk a little bit more about that. What's happening emotionally, energetically, when you're that far upgrid that might compel you to go and vote? So what kinds of emotions tend to live further and further upgrade?
Fear.
Fear. What else? There's four.
Grief.
Anger. Yeah, fear, grief. Yep. I just gave you another one. Yeah, it's anger, grief,
shame. Yeah.
fear, and shame. Anger, grief, fear, and shame. And remember that anger and pain walk hand in hand. So if you end up being injured, you're going to be angry. And if you're angry, somehow or another, you've been injured. And that injury could be a physical injury, an emotional injury, an intellectual injury. I mean, being insulted is an intellectual injury, but it'll still, upset you and all that. So I can certainly understand why people upgrid would cast a vote. Now, before we leave them and look at outgrid, I just want you to know that we're going to be returning to this upgrade because while they may vote, how is their voting impacted? So what's going on in their head, and how does that in turn impact their whatever vote they cast? So I don't want to give it away, but there it is. Okay, so outgrid. Why do outgrid people vote?
Because they can.
Because they can. What else is going on with them energetically? Yep.
How doesn't it give them power? They have
power.
Power. They've got the power, right? Yeah, they're outgrid.
How about pride?
Yeah, a lot of it is pride. Remember that whole anything having to do with pride, self-esteem, etc., is going to increase as we move further and further outgrid. At a certain point, you're going to the danger zone, and now pride becomes arrogance and all that puffing up that can. So there's a certain grandiosity that'll occur over here, but there's a very powerful yet appropriate level of drive and pride that's really going to make you stand up for whatever it is that you really believe in. So does that energy of voting feel different than the upgrid energy of voting?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's what we want to start to really appreciate. This is what's really going on. Is there's some dynamic that's happening that's causing these two types to vote. Now, for a moment, we're going to look at the other two, because I'm not suggesting that people who are down grid or in grid don't vote. But would you say, if we're going to just not use specific numbers, but because we'd have to do the research, and I'm sorry, I'm busy that day. But what percentage overall of out-grid people do you think are likely to vote? What percentage, and don't give me a number, but would you say there's a substantial chance that people that are out-grid are going to go and vote? There's a substantial chance that people that are up-grid are going to go out and vote. How about the people that are down-grid? What do you think about them?
50-50.
Yeah, it's a smaller percentage, but I think there is a tendency to, I think there's strong potential for voting there.
I think so too, but if we're going to go relatively speaking, that's it. And so, again, we're going to be talking about a lot of things that are, I know they're going to feel random, but I believe they're going to gel together to one understanding by the time we're done with all this. So I believe that there is a possibility that people of this energy, of this, in fact, personality, that will vote. Yeah. And then how about in-grid? What do you think? Is in-grid one of the higher likelihoods or lower likelihoods to vote?
I think they vote.
I do think they vote, but again, it's a relative thing. Do you believe the polls are more likely, or the voting is more likely to happen by people that are in-grid or out-grid? Who is more likely to vote, in-grid or out-grid?
Out-grid. It seems like the in-grid, the way the politics are running, from what I'm seeing, seems like they're favoring people who are out-grid, like they, try to influence behavior. Where in-grid, I don't think they'll capture that.
Okay, good. Now, again, these things are all just to kind of stir up some thinking around this whole subject, because I do want to see if we can actually come up with some sort of patterns. And I believe they're there because we're going to be looking at how we go about influencing each of these locations of the change grid to go where I need them to be to actually vote. So remember that right now we're talking about overall or generalized energy. Sooner or later, the question is going to be, what level of tension do they experience on the actual activity of casting their vote? So there's a lot of people out there who said they were going to vote. I don't know if they're going to show up or not. I don't know how many people today might go to a polling location, see the line and say, well, forget about it and move on. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like there's a lot of things that could actually interfere with certain groups deciding to follow through on their vote. So again, I don't want to give it all away. Who do you think is more likely to vote come hell or high water, on the in-grid side of things or the out-grid side of things?
Out-grid.
Out.
And who do you think is more likely to vote come hell or high water, the people that are down-grid or the people that are up-grid? The up-grid. And so, I get it. There'll still be people that are in-grid and down-grid that are going to do it. But if I was running for office, I would want to go, how do I mobilize these people? Instead of just competing for the people who are already going to go out there and vote, I need to get more voters involved in the pool. How would I do that? And, what would my strategy be there? And maybe some of the questions we'll be looking at is the population worth going after? Is there a more valuable population, or is there a more natural population to be going after? So again, we're just looking at this whole world of elections from this tension management sort of lens.
May I ask a question as a newbie, so to speak? From my experience, there's a big difference between, and I've only participated in one vote, but there's a difference between, I think there's, like when I see the politicians, it seems like they're trying to get people, incite behaviors based on this popularity thing. But when you really talk to people on the ground, it seems like they're interested in voting based on how they live. And to me, those are two different things.
Yeah, well, and what you're talking about now is the messaging part of elections. And how those messages might need to be focused in a more laser-like fashion if I'm trying to secure a particular area of the change grid for voting in my favor. And I'm going to have to modify that message for somebody else. So am I going to try to go, what message do I need? Or here's my message, who will respond to it? What's driving the campaign, the message, or seeing a population exists and doing whatever you can to move that population to you? You guys with me on this? So there's at least two different dynamics that you could either favor or focus on, or you're doing some combination of those two and many others. Bottom line, though, is that we have to understand that not everyone is in the exact same location on the change grid. There are people who, when the activity of casting my vote comes to their reality, they're going to plop in every single location on this change grid. And that means some of them are very likely to go out there and vote, and some of them are far less likely to go out there and vote. Now, even if they do go out there and vote, does their location on the change grid tell me something about what are the values, the attitudes, the beliefs that are driving that behavior? Is that kind of internal process or frame that they're putting around it different for different locations on the change grid? And ultimately, the question is going to be, how do I win an election if that's part of the reality? So if I said to you, when an upgrid energy, an upgrid personality, if you will, an upgrid energy is about to cast their vote, what do you think is actually, what do I want to say, a potential problem area about votes that are cast by upgrid energies?
Lack of reasonability, I would think.
Okay.
So it's like they're emotionally overwhelmed, and that's going to, rob you of some reasonability.
Yep.
It turns off those processes. When you're in the fight to flight response, you're not thinking necessarily based on reason. You're thinking based on the emotion.
Very good.
Yeah, it's reactive versus internally driven.
There it is.
Exactly. That's
There it
better
is.
said.
The climate is so angry too. I think there's just such an emotion of anger and aggression, in recent years. Don't you?
Well, yeah,
people
and look at
voting.
where that is. That's when upgrade reaches an extreme. We may encounter some anger there, but mostly these people are experiencing the pain that is triggering the anger. The anger tends to be an outgrid, more of an outgrid emotion, because the anger is ultimately being directed. It's being expressed. So if I'm this far upgrade, I might not be throwing a tantrum in that moment. I just might be, what do we say, deeply hurt one way or another. But the day will come when my anger may be actually expressed. So remember, all the danger zones are neighbors of one another. So we move quickly and freely from one danger zone to another once we enter any danger zone. So
where is rushing? Like,
okay, well, let's stop right there. What's the word rush tell me about the amount of energy or tension?
quite high.
Quite high. And what's the level of drive associated with the word rush?
Out of control.
Well, yeah, that's something. It's like, if upgrade and downgrade, we're looking at the level of tension. When I hear a word rush or a verb rush, I know it has an upgrade energy to it, but usually I'm rushing to an outcome or I'm rushing to another place. There is some targeted outcome. There's some goal that's already been placed there. So the second question is, how driven am I to go about doing it? How much drive does the word rush imply? And I would think that rushing has a lot of drive and a lot of tension. So that would live like right around here, general vicinity, right?
That's how I felt. It's very stressful for me. Again, as the second time voter, just because I'm here in the DC area, so I did what do you call the out of state thing, right?
Yeah, yep.
So you had to get the thing in, but I'm looking at the ballot and I'm like, who are these people? I don't know half of the people up here. So I'm calling around. I called, Miss Linda's group for the state of Florida. They couldn't give me no information. There's no information on site, and then I have to get it back by a certain time.
Yep.
I said, this is a headache to me.
Yeah, well, and so that's an interesting thing. Again, we're going to be talking about as we work our way through all four of these, what also turns that that location off when it comes to voting, or when it comes to casting, um, yeah, just voting when it comes to elections, because something is stimulating each of these energies, but something else is also going to be interfering with each of those energies. So if I'm the politician and I know what the answers are to what's stimulating them and what's interfering it, my goal would be to do what? More of the stuff that stimulates or interferes. I want to do more of the stuff that stimulates and less of the stuff that interferes, so I can hopefully move that population my way. Mhm.
Would you
Hey,
say
Steve,
that the most,
what about
Oh, I'm sorry, go right ahead, David, and
oh, I'm
then,
sorry,
no, and then Chris, yeah.
would you say the most accurate, well thought out, and in control voting happens within the green circle?
Oh, yeah, yeah. If we really wanted to make the absolute best decisions for our country, if we really wanted to do that, we would all find a way to move ourselves to the exact center of the change grid and to bring everyone with us. So from a place of total centeredness, we can all see life as it truly is. The further away from the change grid we go, the more distorted reality becomes. And if I've got campaigners or that or whatever that are putting messaging in front of me that is moving me away from the center of the change grid, they are actually undermining the quality of the vote I'll cast. So if we really wanted the best, my stress is there in order to emphasize that I do not believe that the world of politics wants the whole voting public to be in the center, fully informed, dissociated from, practicing that art of caring detachment. So detaching themselves from all of the emotional hullabaloo that's going around with all of this, really scrutinizing sources of information to just get the essential, simple truth. Do you really think they want us to do that? No, because when we are there, how easily manipulated are we? Not. And so suddenly the only way you have of winning is if you actually are the best choice for the job. You guys with
Did
me?
that ever exist?
What's that?
Did that ever exist, or does that exist?
Well, I don't
Any
know. I mean,
examples?
I've only been voting for, I don't know, what is it, 47 years or something like that. In my 47 years, I certainly believe that there are certain people that are of that kind of mindset, but I'm just telling you, it doesn't matter if there's any there or not, because they are overwhelmed by the messaging of the people who are trying to usurp it. So I guess one of the subjects I was going to bring up on the next call, but it's kind of coming up now, is this idea that there are people who create a situation. There are also people who say, I'm not creating a situation, I'm just noticing what the situation is. And based on what I notice the situation is, how it got that way, I really don't care. Who got it that way, I really don't care. I just see the situation for what it is. Now, what can I do to jump in there and suddenly seize control of what's going on? What can I do to suddenly grab a part of what's already there? So what they're doing is usurping the situation as opposed to creating the situation. So that makes them opportunists. So there are some people in the world of elections that are trying to be that centered, doing the right things for the right people, serving humanity, all the noblest aspects of being someone who is responsible for an entire population of a country or a world. There's a nobility to the whole thing, but you wonder sometimes, has that nobility been lost by some Has it never been present in others, and they're just seeing the opportunities to swoop in and usurp whatever the opportunity happens to be? So I'm saying all this, and again, I wanted to hold the deep discussion on that till later, because I believe there is a great deal to understand about this whole world of elections, from what the change grid can demonstrate pretty easily.
See,
Yeah,
I really believe that the people you're talking about that really do care,
yeah,
believe that there's a lot more of them than we know of. And it's because of what we were talking about earlier, that the media seizes um, the peop the big story or
sure.
the fantastic story.
Mhm.
And that's the people that are the loudest trying to gain attention. And I really do think there's a lot of people trying to do a lot of really good work, and they run up against the people that are distracting, I guess you'd say.
I agree, Linda.
They're getting the attention. And so that becomes the real question then, is the truth is that the people who win elections are probably unlikely to be the best person for the job. They were just the most successful in their marketing.
Yes, I believe that is true.
Yeah. And I don't know that that's ever been any different. I mean, I'm sure in elections gone by early in all of our lifetimes, for example, um, media was a rare and precious commodity. There wasn't hundreds of outlets. You were trying to get a little bit of coverage in whatever newspapers could be going on. Maybe there was TV, maybe there was a radio before that, but the challenge of getting your message out to the voting public was very different pre-internet. And even go back further than that, before television became such a commonplace sort of things. Back in the days when each of us only had 3 or 4 TV channels to choose from, um, that was a very different world. And if you go back to the finest days of television news reporting, you got to go back to when there was only 3 major networks, and the competition was for who was the most, what word would we have used to describe them?
Relatable.
Relatable. But even before that, we were going like, when I think of Walter Cronkite, when I
Reliable,
reliable,
Respectable.
trustworthy. Yeah, what did you say there, Kathy? Or
Respectable.
respectable, this idea that
Credible.
credible,
Wise.
yeah, there was a wisdom to the whole thing. There was a lack of emotion about what's going on. This is matter of fact, stuff that you can count on, everyone. This is the truth. And they all knew that that's what they had to do. So there was a certain quality of journalism that was very much present during a certain era
There
of
was there
media.
was a lot more white hat types of stories than the sensationalized ones of today.
Exactly. It wasn't commentary back then. It was
yeah,
reporting the news. And when the 6 o'clock news came on, you went like, I don't know what your household was like, but in my household, it was kind of like, this is important stuff for us to know. This is the evening news. And it was like you needed to hear it because it's how you got informed and how you stayed informed. Where today there's how many different outlets for so-called news, and of that so-called news, how much of it is actually news versus
yeah.
commentary and whatever.
That's waning certainly. That
Yeah,
I just put in the chat the Edelman Trust Barometer for 2021. So they look at this idea of this waning or failing trust, and Harvard wrote about this in 2019. And certainly business, media, government, NGOs, those 4 institutions, it's just been dropping significantly in what they call the infodemic.
yeah.
So it's there's not a lot of trust in any of those entities today, or
Right, 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 right. Okay, so back to the change grid. So we're at right now is that this idea that in the perfect world, if we really wanted to have, heaven on earth or whatever, everyone would be living in the exact center of the change grid in every country, no matter what, every culture, however they would experience and express this centered position. Great. That's where good stuff comes from. That has all the qualities we're really looking for. But the truth is they don't want us there because we are very independent. We're at the center. We are detached. So we're not easily manipulated and we are not, what do I want to say, deferring our autonomy to others. We're kind of going like, no, we're all equals here. So they don't want that. If you want to control the world, where do you need to be on the change world? If you're hell bent on world domination, what personality type, what location on the change grid is world domination?
D, driver, outgrid.
Outgrid, very outgrid, outgrid danger zone. You start
Danger zone, even the
becoming,
danger zone.
yeah, because now out here you're evil about the whole thing. But if you really wanted to be the savior of the universe, well, 1010 would probably be the energy required to get there. Um, But keep in mind that energy, as powerful as it may be, can be a complete turnoff to other energies. The thought is that this energy will attract a majority of the voting population. They'll follow me or whatever. And so now that's different than upgrade. We said the person who is upgrade, their error in decision making or judgment or whatever is that because they don't feel like they have a very high level of ability and they're in a very challenging situation, they know that someone else needs to rescue them. So they're feeling out of control. So all those things about power stress and stress, more about stress than power stress, but nevertheless, more upgrade kind of energy is what's really holding true. So someone comes along and throws them a life ring, and that life ring equals vote for me. If you want that life ring, then you vote for me. That's what's going on. So they're easily swayed, easily manipulated because they don't know any better, and they are therefore waiting for the direction of the people they see as who can save them, who can protect them. Now, if you look at the outgrid kind of energy, we've already said, well, outgrid is very much driven to do things, very confident, very proud, to a strong degree. That's all very positive kind of stuff, but we know that there's a danger zone where that pride becomes bravado and things become dangerously competitive and physically threatening, and all that sort of pugilistic sort of stuff happens out here. So stirring up all kinds of whatever. Remember that people in the outgrid danger zone create risk where it often does not exist, purely to make things more interesting. So they believe that they knowingly step into harm's way and bring others with them because they do have this sense of great superiority over whatever the challenges they face. This is the domain of superhumans. This is the domain of narcissistic personalities. So that's what's going on there. They're very charismatic. That's why they're very dangerous. And so they are the people who are really targeting the more in-grid but out-grid people, because what do all these people here want? These people are already leaning out-grid. So what are they really ripe for? Anybody? That's an advanced question. These people are hungry for something. You're right here. You got an ability 6, 7, or 8. You see the challenge 6, 7, 8, maybe even a little bit higher. And so there you are, there you are, there you are. And you're looking for anybody? All right, because I want to process this. You're looking for a leader. You're looking for direction. You're saying, I'm here. I want to move forward. I want to do this. So I am one of your allies. I'm someone who's joining in your forces. I'm one of your team. I'm one of your movement. I'm one of your whatever. But what can I do? Put me to work, blah, blah, blah. And then they in turn become the army that starts reinforcing the message, spreading the message, etc. So these people are very ripe for the power of a good leader. Now let that leader have an evil streak and you've got another element to deal with. But I'm talking right now about really strong, good quality leadership. This out here, Outgrid, is where people are driven. They have a movement. They're very much engaged in whatever's going on. They have strong intentions about what's going on, but they do need someone to help them boost their abilities. So knowledge, skill, experience, they need to have more structure, order, organization, and that leader energy provides them with that. So if I am the politician and I am trying to attract all of you to me, I need to make sure that I am giving you a compelling vision that you can stand behind for a better day. I don't need to frighten you. I need to awaken the leader within each one of you. I need to awaken your sense of pride, your sense of purpose and drive and all that. And if I can do that, now you become a team of followers. And everyone knows a leader's greatest power is in their followers, the first follower in particular, but these are the people that I need who can then turn around, face the rest of the change grid, and now each one go after whatever section of the change grid they're trying to pull into whatever this movement happens to be. Is this interesting to everyone? No one's dropped off the call. That's always a good sign. But, you know,
Very,
yeah. So this is the dynamic. Now, so let's just again look at those. So if all I want to do is get half of the population, and let's just say for the heck of it, I don't think this is true, but let's say just for the heck of it, that 25% of the population lives in each one of these quadrants. I don't know. Well, let's say I'm really good at getting both of those. I still only have half the population of potential voters. Luckily for me, if I can get the people that are upgrid and I can get the people that are outgrid and I can get the people that are halfway in between, anywhere around here, I might get enough that I can win. I might get enough that I can win, in spite of the fact that we got all these people downgrid and ingrid who may or may not have voted and certainly have may have a very different value driving system than I do. All right.
Does the government keep statistics on that kind of thing?
No, I don't think so. I don't.
No?
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, have you guys had a discussion like this before? I mean, I don't know that they really, first of all, I don't know how scientifically you could actually measure it. It would probably just end up being a poll of some sort, and we all know how accurate those things can be. So, yeah, I just think it's an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting thing to look at because again, if I'm the politician and I'm already someone who is in this outgrid, I already am a strong leader. I can easily get these people to my way of thinking. But these people up here need a different message. Do you guys agree with that? They need a different message. And
Yes, they need somebody to save them.
right. And so am I going to give two different messages, or does it help me if some of these followers are now going after that population with the proper message for what's going on, you know? Otherwise, I got to present balance because it's not just those two. By the time we're done, we're going to say I also need messages for people that are more downgrid and people that are more ingrid if I want to get the whole population stimulated to vote. So, yeah. All right. So we already know upgrid and outgrid are likely to show up to vote. What do you think might stop someone from voting if they are upgrid to begin with? What could stop them from voting?
Hopelessness.
Hopelessness, right? So they don't believe that you are the option or there is an option, and so they just throw up both hands and
Yeah, or it just won't make a difference.
right, because they're so stressed out, they become very reactive, and one of the decisions they might react themselves into is the decision not to vote. So he scared them. So that's an important thing. How else might we scare people away from voting?
Physical fear.
Physical fear of doing it. Obviously, we had a bit of that in Arizona the past week or two. So pretty powerful stuff as a result. You know, you don't want to scare people. And again, you know, I'd like this to be a discussion that's more global than just the US. We all know of countries where people are terrified to cast their vote. So what's that really all about? And does that power of the ability to impose terror or fear in another person or in a population, how does that affect voting? and how does that affect showing up to vote, et cetera, et cetera. So we all know plenty of stories that just show how
So,
that's
do you think that we could put other countries on the change grid?
absolutely.
Like
Right.
Russia might be up grid?
Yeah, well, plus I think we can also put political persuasions on the change grid. So where does democracy live? Where does, if we want to talk about true socialism, where does that live? Where does true, I don't know, fascism live? Where does true, what do we say? What were they called? We had kings and queens and all that. Where does that all live? These are all different models of politics. These are all different ways to organize and ultimately control people. So it's not just the one. I mean, technically, you could put religion on the list. So it's all ways of going about persuading, influencing, controlling other people. So, all right, anyway, so let's say that we go downgrid for a second. So we said that downgrid is less likely to vote than people that are more upgrid or outgrid. So let's change the subject a little bit. How right now do we help people that are downgrid to vote?
Appeal to their nobler motives.
In doing that, we're moving them upgrid. Maybe that's going to sway them into making a difference. So we say, we need your vote. You're in agreement with it. All we need you to do is vote, vote, vote. And then the day comes, and what have we done to try to help people voting become, I don't want to give it away, something that a downgrid person is more likely to do?
Say it again, T.
Okay, what have we done as a society on the subject of voting to help make sure that more people that are downgrid actually cast their vote?
Oh,
Waking them
mail-in
up.
ballots.
What's that? Mail-in ballots, exactly right. The whole point, if you want downgrid people to vote, voting must be first and foremost one word. What's that word?
Easy.
Oh, I'll
Yeah.
use easy. I was going to use convenient.
Yeah.
Convenient, They
Easy
want,
is good, easy.
yeah, easy. That's fine.
Well, mail-in was not easy. I can tell you that.
For you. We've done mail-in voting since we moved to North Carolina. That was a long time ago.
Really?
Well, because we were often out of the country on election day. So
Oh,
even if you're traveling, you can't be someplace on election day. So back in the day,
right.
we didn't even have like early voting. Physical voting wasn't even an option. I don't remember that. Do you guys, when we first started voting?
Yeah,
No,
we
you
still
go to
don't
the
have it in
precinct.
Connecticut. We still don't have early voting in Connecticut, physical voting in Connecticut.
Really? So
We-
you got to
it's
go,
on
you
the
go on
ballot.
election day, or you have a reason to have a mail-in ballot.
Right, right. It was actually on the ballot today.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. So all states don't do it.
No, each state has its own elections.
Oh, wow.
Say, I don't know
Interesting.
what the word would be, but their
Okay.
own way of doing it. Obviously, they all have to meet certain levels of consistency, particularly for federal elections. But most of the issues on a ballot, Brian, tend to be more of a local or state nature anyway. Because you're voting for who's taking care of your garbage. You're voting.
Right.
There's a lot of things on there that really is just local government or state government, but doesn't get involved. So
So did you and Miss Linda find it easy to do?
in Arizona, it's effortless because they've been doing it for so long. It really is a streamlined thing. We mailed in our ballots. We received both text messages and emails that said your vote was received. It tells you date and time it was received. Your signature has been verified, and you get a different text and all this, and then your vote has been counted. So they got their act together here when it comes to that, which is why it's a tragedy that they had this whole situation arise last time around, because this is definitely one place. And unless I'm mistaken, let's see, Denise, no, we have one of our colleagues lives up in the Pacific Northwest, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Oregon only has mail-in voting. So
Really?
yeah, is that right, Linda? You would know.
I don't know if it's only, but everybody gets a mail-in ballot.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody has the option to mail in Oregon.
Okay.
Everybody.
Yeah, and no one's
Interesting.
saying anything about Oregon. So they've been doing it for a really long time. So, but my point is that is something that very much is meaningful. Again, we talk about values. Even when you think about your own political beliefs, you do understand that your political beliefs are driven by your values. And so whatever those values are, you're going to do what everyone else does, and that's favor candidates who resonate with your values and, raise your eyebrows about those who don't. And so, that's just the way that it is. Sooner or later, it all boils down to whatever our personal value system is. And so when I think about people that are downgrade, think about what they're saying. First of all, in general terms, they view their ability as being quite high or low. Everyone play with feet. And the perceived challenge of life as they know it.
Low.
Yeah, pretty low, pretty reasonable. It's all very manageable. Good for them. So if I said, who lives down here? Is there a pattern in living based on level of economic security? So as economic security goes up, what happens to someone's level of productive tension?
That would go up.
That
Goes
Everybody-
down.
Goes down.
Yeah, goes down.
Yeah.
So the more resources you have, and truly, I don't really care what the
got it.
resource
Yeah.
is, the abundance of resources, or even perceived, because again, it's all perception. So there could be an illusion or an assumption that you've got more resources than in truth you really do, or whatever. That's certainly something that happens downgrade. But nevertheless, there, if you think you're well off financially, you're going to be downgrade. What about education? Is there any kind of a prediction you would make in the relationship between productive tension and level of education completed?
The higher the level, the lower the tension.
The higher the level, the lower the tension. And, we can apply to a lot of things like certain career paths. I'm sure there are certain occupations that are going to be in different locations of the change grid. Unless I'm mistaken, is an air traffic controller still one of the most stressful jobs there is? So, different things you choose to do are also going to move you to different locations on the change grid as well. So when I think about, all right, be that downgrade person where you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from, and as unfortunate and inconvenient as inflation is, it's not really making any big differences in the choice of things that you want to have for dinner. You guys, and I believe as I'm saying that, I'm talking to all of you, right? I mean, we go like, oh, well, I hate inflation. I certainly don't like paying higher prices for stuff, that whatever. But maybe I should just count my blessings that I'm in the position that I'm able to do that. And so as a result, I'm a bit more downgrade when it comes to some of those activities of daily living. Or maybe I'm more downgrade when it comes to this, that, or the other thing. And so that lack of energy may make me say, no matter what they say they're going to do some, and they're going to do different stuff and blah, blah, blah. So whatever, do whatever you really want to do. Or, I could have a lot of opinions downgrade, and I could have a lot of advice for a lot of people about the right things, right way things should be done, blah, blah, blah. But am I out there really doing anything to make it all happen? What do you think?
No.
No,
Absolutely not.
No,
not. I'm less likely to. Now, again, if I'm a bit further upgrade, I'm still in power inside of the green circle. Maybe I'm out there as a bit of more of an expert, because again, relatively speaking, my level of ability would be among the higher inside of the red circle, inside of the green circle, and the perceived level of challenge is viewed as manageable. So I get it. I could certainly be there, but further down grid I go. Yeah, other things are coming into play. And so what I want is something to be convenient for me, something that I know is good, that it's working, it's correct. I don't want to waste my time by doing something that isn't going to count. And I certainly don't want to waste my time doing something that hasn't been proven, or whatever the case may be. And so I like things that are routine and convenient and all that. So if I am a politician and I'm trying to influence these people to get out there and vote on my behalf, what are some of the things that I might want to do? I might want to think about what?
Just making it easy to do.
Making it easy.
Wow, yeah.
And that's either do things deliberately to make it easier, or eliminate barriers that make it complicated. And I think that you guys remember from our discussions on motivation that you will go a lot further, a lot faster with an individual or a population if you focus on eliminating demotivators first. before you start adding more motivators, eliminate demotivators. You're taking pain away from them within and of itself is a positive sort of a thing, but it's viewed as having both of those values. You've taken away the pain and you've brought along something that really is easier. So anywho, that's what this is really all about. Now,
So T, wouldn't
yep.
taking away the pain be a motivator?
Yeah, well, exactly. And so again, because as we go away or around this term, I'm going to say, all right, now that we know what each one of these areas responds to, how I get them to vote my way, what is it that I want to be doing to make those things happen? But there's another side to it, and that is, what messages do I want to put out there that might very well harm my opponents, even though it may or may not help me? So, for example, if someone is feeling out of control, and as much as I want them to vote for me, I just don't want them to vote for so-and-so, maybe I can make sure they don't vote for so-and-so by moving their level of tension even further upgrid. So let me terrify them. Or maybe I want to go like, or if I can move them all the way down to apathy, but that's a long trip, everybody. Maybe I could do that, just convince them somehow or another that there's nothing for them to worry about. Everything's all taken care of. There's no reason for them to go out there and vote. The voting is already done. Just give me all your ballots and I'll drop them off. So there's all kinds of susceptibilities that occur as we're that too far upward. So when might I want to do that in the frame around my opponents versus what like would I want? Okay, if I'm a politician and I want more people to vote for me, I know what to do. But at the same time, I want to make sure they don't vote for somebody else. So even if you don't vote for me, I would rather that you not show up and vote at all, perhaps, than vote for somebody else, right? Or maybe I want you to vote for someone who isn't my most powerful competitor, which is the equivalent of throwing your vote away. Maybe that's what I want to do. Are there things I can do to help lead you to one of those outcomes if you don't come and vote for me? Now, you guys see this kind of stuff all the time, where rather than using the airtime on an advertisement to convince you why you should vote for the candidate, they instead spent their money putting together a commercial by why you shouldn't vote for somebody else. And maybe what they're telling you is going to move you in a direction on the chain grid that actually, hopefully for you as a politician, increases the likelihood that someone will vote for you, but negates the possibility that they will vote for your competitor. So can you guys feel any evidence of that out there in the media you've been listening to in recent days?
Of course, that's all you hear.
That's right.
That's
So
all you hear.
yeah. And so sometimes the ads are about enhancing the candidate, and sometimes they're about undermining the credibility or the attraction of the other candidate. So whatever it is. Now, again, if we were all in the center of the change grid, how susceptible are we to either one of those ads?
Not very.
Not very. And, I would like to think that among the people who are in the circle of brilliance, we do realize that we have the ability to move ourselves to the center of the change grid anytime we want, and at least keep ourselves inside of the green circle with just a little bit of energy put into doing that. We know we can move ourselves here anytime we really, really want. Does that give these politicians and other advertisers, even if you want to take it into the world of consumerism, does that make their messaging more or less powerful with us?
I think it's less powerful.
Less
I was
powerful.
I was talking to you and David before the call started, and I know it's a very what would you call it, unofficial poll, but we at the League of Women Voters had a lot of different expos that we had tables at to give people information. And I'd say the number one thing we heard is, oh, thank you for being here. We are so tired of hearing all these advertisements. We don't even listen anymore.
Yep. And so messaging can become a real problem. And, it may very well be that, let's say that you're a candidate that for whatever reason, you've become a pro at delivering negative advertisements about your opponents, and really don't talk about any of your own accomplishments, any of your own attributes, qualities, etc. But instead, you just focus on undermining the credibility or attractiveness of all the other opponents. There are some politicians that are exceptionally good at that kind of messaging. Well, unfortunately, if you're someone who was kind of on the fence or leaning towards that candidate, you may view that relentless negativity as being a sufficient turnoff that you end up not voting for the individual. But for everyone who's like that, there might be someone else who is emboldened by that negative messaging that's coming out of the individual, that they end up parroting that same messaging, or believing that if you can get away with saying outrageous things, then I can get away with saying outrageous things as well. And so that ends up actually raising the level of tension of the individuals that are involved. It does increase their fear over certain things, and it awakens bravado in them. So they step out grid, they step up grid, and they end up at a place on the change grid where things can get rather dangerous. Okay, so now what about, just to finish this off, we've only got 6 minutes left for this one. I just like to finish this one, is what about these in-grid voters? Historically, there have been many times when certain segments of the population have been lumped into this area and were not allowed to vote. So if I go back to older times, you had to be a landowner in order to be able to vote. So if you were not a landowner, well, you were probably here because you had a low level of ability to vote, but you also knew it. And so your level of challenge wasn't much. It might even been a non-issue. You were aware of the fact that votes were occurring, but you had already accepted the fact that you were not eligible to vote because you were not a landowner or whatever. And then time went on, and certainly the women's suffrage movement is an example of that. Women for the longest time were kept in grid, moved in grid, and were willing to be there for a good long while until enough of them stood up and loudly enough stepped forward and said, we're not going to take this anymore. And so, but they were basically a group of people that were moved in grid. You remember we were talking about cultures, and we said sometimes cultures end up getting assimilated, and sometimes there was one where they get cast aside, and I thought that was marginalized. So this ends up being that marginalized group that the politicians may not really focus on, because you either A, cannot step up and cast a vote, or the amount of time and energy it would take to not only get you willing to do it, but maybe even to give you the wherewithal to be able to vote. It would just go like, don't focus on them, don't bother with them, just ignore them. Whatever happens, there's not enough there for us to bother going after. And
Would they be mail-in voters, if anything?
they could be, but I'll give you an example from the state of Arizona. There are areas of the state that are so sparsely populated that the act of even mailing something, forget a vote, forget a ballot, but just the act of mailing something would take you a day to be able to get yourself to where a post office might be. You may not have transportation, and there may be no public transportation.
And the Native Americans don't have addresses.
Right. Oh, and the other thing is that
Huge population.
yeah, huge population in the state of Arizona, but by the way things operate, they do not have street addresses, which means they cannot be mailed anything official from a state or whatever. So it ends up becoming things. So yeah, David, there are people that are going to be on the in-grid side of things that simply do not have the wherewithal to be able to meet the requirements to cast their vote. So marginalized is probably the category they were into, but they're just not considered to be significant enough in their numbers or in their impact that they merit the attention of of the whole mechanism of what elections is really all about. Truth be told, every person in this country who is eligible to cast a vote should have an equal opportunity to do so. And that equal opportunity seems like such a non-issue when you live in a major metropolitan area, as pretty much all of us do. But there's rural, and rural is a problem when it comes to being able to do those things, particularly if you lack transportation. So, yeah. And by the way, we've also now, you lack transportation. Imagine this, again, be the politician. Do I want to help this population to vote for me? Yes. Do I want to help this population vote against me? No. So is it easier to help them vote for me, or is it easier for me to prevent them from voting one way or another? Well, one of the ways that can be done, one example of it is something that's happened in this state. There used to be people who would volunteer to charter buses, pick up people, and take them to
Yeah.
the polling locations. That became illegal because it was like a way you were trying to influence their vote, because they believed that you would be more likely to vote in accordance with whoever provided that transportation. As of today, it is against the law for any concern, any charity, any whatever. No one can give anyone who is standing in line for hours in Arizona a drink of water. So cannot distribute bottles of water.
But you can bring some along with you, right?
Yes, but these people are in line for the entire day. And they don't have food. So these lines can end up, you guys know this.
What's the reasoning behind that, T? Why can't they have water? What's the reason?
The reason is that it believes you're buying someone's vote. You're actually influencing them. Remember that when you guys go to a poll, it is against the law to approach somebody who's in line within X number of feet with any sort of political messaging. No campaigning can happen, nothing like that. They believe that if you are a charity, or you're just there with water, the act of handing someone a free bottle of water is an act of political campaigning. And so it's simply,
Even though you're representing yourself as just giving water, you're a neutral. Even
doesn't
that.
matter. You're giving the water. You're giving the water.
Why
It's
not, why not have the poll people just provide water for people there and not have it, it's a nonpartisan issue. I don't
Yeah,
understand
you
that
would
one.
think that. I understand completely, but that is currently the situation.
Oh, I know, I get it, yeah.
Yeah, it's wrong. But
And it's been
used to
for
be you could give
years.
out food. We
You
could,
have to stand 75 feet away from anybody, any polling place, unless you're going in to vote.
You know what else is interesting? The ads have all been negative here. And the one that hasn't been lost out. So they obviously work. But the subconscious mind doesn't separate the do's from the do not. So if I'm hypnotizing someone to not eat junk food, I don't talk about the junk food. It's always got to be in the positive. And a lot of the ads were, don't vote for Inman and Irvin. And see, I remember their names. Now people are going to go to the polls and those names are going to be familiar. And they were saying, don't vote for them. And I can't believe the ad people they are hiring don't know anything about psychology. That's wrong.
Right. Yeah,
I know
those
their
names are
names.
now
I don't
top
know
of mind. Yep, those names are now.
Yes, it's crazy.
But who knows? You know what, Edie? Maybe they understand that completely. Maybe they're working it to the advantage of some other whatever. But this is to me
Right.
why I think this conversation is interesting and valuable, is because we're not talking about specific politicians. We're not talking about whatever, other than the fact that they may be an academic example of
Right.
something we went before. But we're saying, like, the bottom line truth is that everybody is someplace on the change grid when it comes to each and every one of the activities that are involved in the act of voting. And that's from knowing about the candidates, to knowing about whatever the propositions are, to being able to read a ballot, to read the wording of a proposal, to know what it's really saying. There's a whole laundry list. Well, I mean, there's a whole change grid activity list related to voting activities. And so we're going to be in a different location for each one of those. And so the question becomes, if I am a politician and you are a voter, I need to know where you are at on the change grid and what that means. And then I need to know what I need to do to move you, assuming I think that that the effort is worthwhile. That's going to be a big deal. Big deal. Yeah.
You
All
know,
right.
maybe the campaign people need to be introduced to the change grid and use that as a
Yeah.
guideline to.
Wouldn't that be great? But then what if it falls into the hands of evil? You know?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
laughing because frankly, I believe I'm Switzerland. So, I mean, I provide weapons to all sides and let alone all that. So, yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. All right, so we'll continue on Thursday, but obviously today is election day, and that means that by the end of the day, we're going to have half the country is going to be rather happy about things, and half the country is going to be rather unhappy about things.
I do not think that's true, T. I
Oh,
think we
good.
won't
Tell me.
know.
Tell me.
I
Tell
don't
me.
think we're gonna know.
Oh, you don't think we're going to know yet? Okay.
Really? You
Yeah,
think it's
because
going to drag on, huh?
I really do. Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think so.
it would be nice to get closure one way or another, but I don't think that's gonna happen. That's just my
Yeah.
opinion.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I think you're
I
absolutely
don't
right.
need Kathy. Yeah, I don't
Well,
think.
yeah, my point for bringing it up is that we're going to each be impacted personally and surrounded by people who are now going to be in a disturbed area of the change grid or in an elated area of the change
Yes,
grid.
that's
And
right.
that's going to change their way of thinking, their way of behaving, their way of operating. And so that's why I said that I wanted to make sure we're talking about how does tension management play out before, during, and after an election. And ultimately, the after the election piece of it can have a lot to do with the clients that you're working with. Because a lot of them are going to go like, now that so and so is in office, how is that going to affect? And then they'll plug in whatever their main area of attention happens to be.
Right, right.
It would be
So
interesting to look at both the midterm and the presidential elections separately.
well, exactly right, exactly right. Because wouldn't it be interesting to now go like, all right, regardless of what happens by the end of the day, there's at least a handful of things that aren't going to change for at least 2 years. So what's going to happen to the people who are now losing perhaps some of their cadre but they're still in the game for 2 years? What's that? How's that going to play itself out? So it'll just be interesting. But I guess my greatest hope of hope is that you guys realize that when it comes to a subject for the circle to discuss, like elections, we're talking about an activity that should be in the exact center of the change grid. But there is so much distortion of reality going on, so much emotion that's going on around us that it ends up clouding us. So can we all keep ourselves emotionally detached from whatever is going around in the results as they come in and in the messages that we end up hearing? Can we keep ourselves detached to say, this is nothing more than an exercise in tension management?
I'm
That's why I'm
working
glad
hard
we're
on that.
talking
I'm
about
working on that one, T.
Yeah, I think it's really critical because we know what happens if we end up upgrid, and we know what happens if we end up outgrid. We know that while there might be positive things, both upgrade and outgrid, there comes a point when they end up becoming self-destructive.
That's right.
And
I
so
think I'm all for just moving towards the center tonight.
you move towards the center and say, whatever it is, it is. And, because, I know that when I'm hearing anger, I know I'm not hearing the whole truth. I'm hearing what bits and pieces of someone's frame, someone's understanding, someone's interpretation, that's obviously making them feel out of control and awakening all sorts of unhealthy emotions. I'm not learning anything that I can use to help change them yet, if they're up there. So I guess I've just always said I can't work with someone who's angry while they're angry. I have to do something to help reduce that anger, because the solution that they need is in the center of the change grid, right? The solution for it isn't further outgrid or downgrid. It's in the middle. And I can't move someone in the middle who's busy being upgraded.
I'm just glad you're talking about it at all, because this idea that, you know, we can't talk about things where someone might disagree or with the other in a civil way, to me is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it is. And sadly, in fact, I was doing one of these online little silly BuzzFeed sort of polls, and it says, what do you think the #1 greatest loss has been suffered by our current civilization? And I said that the biggest loss has been social discourse. That
Civil discourse, yeah.
civil discourse, we're not able to actually have the kind of discussions that need to be had. It's like, I don't know, like, you guys know this, I'm in the middle, and I would like all of my middle people, regardless of what direction you lean, can we all get together and form a third party, please? And can we please be logicians? We're not the Democrats, we're not the Republicans, we're the logicals.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and then,
I'm going to
like,
vote
trying to
now.
stay-
I'm on my way.
Please do take extra water.
Yeah.
Okay, but don't give it to anybody, they'll kick you out of line. Okay, see ya.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.